Hey, everybody. This is Lauren Delisa Coleman with film.io, back with another episode of the Inside series for you guys, everybody out here wanting to just really learn much more about what's inside of the mind of filmmakers and how did these projects actually come to be, and so much more. So we are on our last, believe it or not, interview for the Asian American International Film Festival. And I'm really glad to have this next filmmaker with me who I've pretty much stalked over email. And I've just been able to snag her now for a few minutes while she is sitting in California. Her name is Tiffany Frances, and the name of the film is Hello from Taiwan. So let's just jump right into it. Tiffany, welcome to film.io, the Inside series.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
I am so glad to be able to have you, especially, as another female filmmaker who is bringing to light yet another story through the eyes of either a younger, like kind of a girl type of character, or, a full woman. I don't know if it's like something in the air, but so many filmmakers I'm talking to, it doesn't matter what genre, demographic, like it's the moment for the woman. I don't even care if it's like female or male directors. There's something about this voice that's coming through. And so when I saw, a bit about your film, it made me want to be able to, of course, check it out and then be able to speak with you. So why don't I, toss it over to you? Tell our viewers, first of all, please, as we always start, with a quick synopsis of the film, Hello from Taiwan.
Hello from Taiwan is about a Taiwanese American family who struggles to reunite across cultural and language barriers as they are trying to navigate a divorce between the parents. And essentially, it's sort of based a little bit on my childhood, one of my earliest memories, which is about me and my sisters. And I was about 4 or 5 at the time, and I remember seeing them at the airport being like, wait, I haven't seen you guys for a year. And they had gone to Taiwan for a year. They had been to Taiwan for a year with my dad because my parents were about to get a divorce. But of course, I didn't really know what was going on. I was so young at the time. And I remember meeting my sisters at the airport, and they had gotten so used to speaking Mandarin at the time. And it wasn't like they forgot their English or anything like that. But for the very first few moments that we spoke to each other, the only words we really said to each other were hi and hello. And basically, it was such a funny memory in my head because I kind of knew that they were my sisters, but I also hadn't been around them for a year, and I had my mom all to myself. So it was kind of, based off of that experience. And then the film takes off from that memory and goes into other issues about the Taiwanese American family. But yeah, so that's essentially the basics of it.
It's just so interesting. So just to like kind of clarify or confirm, your sisters were with your father in Taiwan. And so when they returned, they remained with you and your mom for the rest of kind of their childhood lives and into teenagehood.
Yeah, essentially, yeah. So my dad came back with the intention of dropping off both my sisters, and that's what he did. And then he went back to Taiwan, but eventually my dad and my mom got back together. I know. So I actually grew up with a whole family intact. So this whole, part of my childhood was just like such a weird part of my family history, because I grew up just thinking my family was completely whole and wholesome, and there hadn't been this divide, so it's actually really, that's why I kind of wanted to explore this moment.
I find it so interesting because, as well, a filmmaker who I just had the opportunity to speak to in Taiwan actually a few days ago is also kind of exploring maybe some of the unresolved issues in her family, and particularly with her father, through a film that kind of speaks to anybody. I don't think we ever know. And I was reading some quotes or something the other day about just how we never really know our parents, and they always have so many of their own issues and traumas and et cetera. So, it's always quite a challenge to both, love them and honor them and look up to them, but also realize that they have a lot of issues going on, too. So what is it in particular that, kind of made you decide to go back to that period in terms of, I guess, bringing it to life as a full film, as opposed to just maybe, thinking about it, discussing it with friends or something? It must have been something that really, kind of touched you, I guess, more as an adult.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a really good question. And it's interesting that you did bring up the themes of fatherhood, because I did write this story as just a single scene before. So it started off as just a scene at the airport. because I always knew there's something interesting about it, but I didn't know what I wanted to say about it quite yet for a while. And then when about 5 years ago now, my dad passed away. And so that actually made me really realize I didn't know him as well as I wanted to know him. And so I started kind of just going through that, going down the memory lane and exploring a lot of themes about family and my culture. Because even before, Hello from Taiwan, I wasn't really writing a lot of Asian American stories. I was writing, or like personal stories based off of me, my childhood. I was writing other things, And so I think I didn't realize that I was like sitting on like a well of stories that my parents kind of had. And even just the things that my parents went through when they were, getting married, or things that happened before I was even born, and kind of what they went through in their relationship. So I was really starting to see my dad in a different way. And it was kind of in a way to try to get closer to him too, in spirit, in terms of like, just remembering who he was and what he went through, and all the sacrifices him and my mom made for me and my sisters coming to America, literally. And so I really took that time to kind of sit on a lot of different stories, but this was the one I was like, oh, I wrote this scene. What else can I develop it into? And so it kind of became the film, as it was. And luckily, I also got into the AAFI Directing Workshop for Women program.
Great.
I know. And so that was actually the film that I had submitted. And luckily they chose me to be one of the participants. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm going to make this film now. And, it wasn't going to be an easy film. I knew it wasn't going to be easy because it is, has a whole airport sequence. There's like a lot of locations, I had to find actors who could speak both Mandarin and Taiwanese. So there's a lot of different challenges that if I wasn't kind of, being brought into it through a program, I don't know if I would have made it, because it was going to be a huge thing. So
that's really great that they were able to support a vision that you hadn't even like maybe yourself fully bought into. But I always think that that's cool that like you just put that little seed in the universe. You never know how it's going to come back. So give me kind of a little bit of a timeline on this. When did you first write the scene, and like how much time like passed to when you got into AFI and then, being able to actually see the film itself? Because it's remarkable, I think, a lot of times how long something can take.
It's very true. Yeah. I mean, this is definitely a work in progress over many years. And I would say that I wrote that scene probably, I'm not sure, 2014, 2015, maybe.
Wow.
Always knowing that there was something there. And I wrote that scene just like as it was, right? Just like as a little scene, like sister saying hi, let it sit on my computer for a very long time. And then after my dad passed away, I started writing a few more things. And then probably I wrote it really in 2018. And then I got into the AFI DWW program, and they chose me by December of 2018. I made the film in 2019, July 2019. And then, it was going to start showing we had a showcase like March 11th, 2020, which never happened. So then
like the very last moment. I know, because that's like the day after my birthday. And so I remember like March 10th was like, I'm still going out. This is not really going to be anything. And then like, okay, it wasn't. So yes, March 11th, you just made it like under the wire.
Exactly.
So then when did you submit to AAIFF?
Yeah, so I submitted to it, I think the end of last year, whenever submissions were open. Maybe it was earlier this year. Yeah. And and I was so excited to be a part of it. I had been there before previously because I used to live in New York City. So I had been there before and had many friends screen there. I was really sad that this year was virtual for the short films, but what can you do? It is what it is.
Hopefully you're going to just be doing a million more, Tiffany, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah. So
that's really great. I mean, I'd love to hear a little bit more now, just to go back a minute, because you said there were challenges like, shooting in an airport, et cetera, et cetera. How did you overcome some of those? As well as I think I'm curious as well about maybe some of the emotional challenges. You said that this was a way to kind of get closer to your father, but wasn't that kind of also a little bit challenging as well? I mean, maybe bittersweet, right? I don't know, but how do you kind of balance both that and the craziness of filmmaking all at the same time?
Yeah, I know. I feel like I kind of I'm not in a, you know, not in a like cold way or anything, but I do categorize myself or categorize things in my life a little bit, so I'm able to sort of place some of my emotions into the writing process. And then as I'm making it, it just becomes, it's almost like a science, not in a bad way, but like, it's because filmmaking has to be so sometimes really specific and sometimes with a lot of restraints. And I think those kind of things allow me to work as a filmmaker in a way that's like not as emotionally attached to it and more just like, I already know what I'm going to do, and so I think that was part of it, but also there was a lot of emotional parts in terms of like when I was fundraising for the film. Like I really got the Taiwanese American community here in LA to really rally behind me. And I think there's a lot of Asian Americans who were really interested in just being able to watch this film. So they were so supportive and just so excited that, there's like a story that was sort of about, that felt like an authentic portrayal of people in our generation. Because they could relate to it. And so I think that was actually the more emotional part, was that people came up to me and were very, just moved by it and excited to just see themselves on screen. And I was like, wow, this is.
Oh, I think that's just so great to hear. So how did you end up handling the airport scene
Oh,
though?
yeah.
All those emotional like hurdles and jumping those hoops. What happened? Did you kick people out of the terminal or what?
Well, we had to create an airport basically out of scratch. So we found, I know. So, and also it had to be vintage, right? So it had to look like from the 80s. And we looked around for vintage airports and things like that. It cost too much for us because we are very low budget. But I think we found, we actually worked at the Carson Civic Center, which is in Carson, California. And they had this like cool community center, literally that just kind of had this vibe to it. And I was like, if we just add a few signs here and there, I think it can pass as an airport. And our production designer did an amazing job, putting up all these signs and putting greenery in the right places, or like those trash bins that are at all airport, all those little details she really placed in there. And I was like, also, if we have a bunch of people with like vintage luggage, it'll look like an airport. So yeah, that's how we did it.
That is really great. You have to be, really creative when you don't have all the things, and all the budget that you might want. But part of that's like really good and somewhat freeing as well, right? Because there's kind of some liberties that you can take. Absolutely. I know that you also do a lot of commercial work too. So was this actually after the making of this film or before? Because I'm curious what kind of parts have played, I don't know, from your background and your experience that you like kind of maybe pulled on to ensure the success of the making of this film?
Yeah. I mean, for me, I've always been sort of like a multidisciplinary artist. So I think commercials has always been a good way to always practice. And I think, and also use a lot of different tools and stuff like that. And I think those parts definitely play into my narrative filmmaking. And I'm very lucky that I get to do that. But then, in terms of like the acting part, I also used to be part of theater. I was a theater kid in high school. I minored in theater in my undergraduate. So I love to work with actors. And I think there's something really magical about that simple process. And so I think when it comes to narrative filmmaking, I love to marry all the processes that I've worked with in the past in terms of, technical stuff, or just literally working with actors, or even, help like working with a composer in post or something like that. Cause I'm also a musician. So there's a lot of different aspects I think that I'm lucky to have had in my life that just filters into my filmmaking.
That's so great. So if maybe you're a filmmaker watching who doesn't have like all of that, what kind of tips might you give that, I don't know, maybe surprised you as like skills either that you didn't have, but that you developed during the making of this film, or that you wish you had, that you might want to like kind of pass on? Because I know that no matter what we all do in life, there's always something where you're like, I wish I had known this before. I want to really share this with somebody so that it's not like they have to touch the hot stove too. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I've seen a lot of filmmakers kind of come up from not having any experience and doing so well. And I think the reason for that to me is because they really know themselves really well. And so like my actual advice is, besides obviously studying film, like watching as many films as possible, inside and out, and really thinking about like all the framing and composition. You can also, I think it's really important to tap into yourself and kind of know like what types of stories that you really want to tell and how you're going to tell them, because I think that's really what's going to make you stand out as you form your ideas and create your stories and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's a huge part of the process. And, journaling is part of that, or meditating, or, just thinking about your memories and your stories that you really, really cherish or love or care about.
I think that's great advice, especially the journaling, especially these days where like it's just so many different things happening. You really have to try and be as steady, I think, and as focused as you can. Let alone for just, filmmaking, especially when life sometimes seems like a film these days, anyway, right? So what's coming next for you, Tiffany?
Yeah. Well, I'm actually shooting something next week. And it's actually for Elle Magazine and Lexus, but it's a short film that I wrote. So it's an original.
Good for you. Oh, I love how you just dropped that in. Like, I'm kind of shooting something next week for these like kind of major brands. Yeah.
I know, I'm very excited about it. So I think it'll be a really beautiful film. But yeah, so that's essentially it. I mean, I'm writing a lot of stories as well, working on a few features that I'm writing, as well as a couple like TV pilots as well. So I'm working hard. I have a lot of new material that I'm ready to share pretty soon. So I'm very excited.
That's really great. I know you said, well, we talked a little bit about this offline, that this is kind of your partially studio, partially office. Is this where you typically like to, kind of create, or when you write, do you go elsewhere? I mean, I know everybody has his or her own kind of, I don't know, strategy and situation. What's yours?
Yeah, I love creating a space. So this is definitely a good space for me in terms of creating. It's nice to have music close by and be able to know that I can play music at any time if I really want to, or record something that just, sporadically comes up. So that part is really important. I think the inspiration for me, besides working, at home and in my office, is also, I don't know, immersing myself in nature. I like to go surf. I like to think
really good for you.
Yeah, I like to think about ideas actually out in the water sometimes, because it really just clears my mind, and I don't have anyone texting me or emailing me. It's like I literally just have a clear frame of mind, and I think the best when I'm also like close to nature and like just in like tactile, beautiful things around me. That really actually is really helpful.
I love hearing that, and it kind of reminds me a little bit about of Tom Ford, because
Yeah.
been quoted many times as saying that he takes several baths a day to get his ideas, because when he's immersed in water, he too has a lot of ideas. And I think there's something to be said a lot about that. I think since we spend the first part of our lives inside of water, right? So
Yeah.
it would kind of make a bit of sense, but maybe not as daring as you, Tiffany, with the surfing and everything, right? I will live through you on that.
Yeah.
On that, but I'm sure it's super fun.
It
Well,
is.
I just want to thank you so much. I can say Sheshe in Mandarin. That is the extent of, well, I know how to say ni hao, of course, Lauren, and I mean hello, and wo chiao, Lauren. Hello, my name is Lauren, and Sheshe, that's it. We are hoping to expand my Mandarin at some point, but that's that's it for the moment.
That's amazing.
I would not have been able to be one of your actors, huh?
Yeah, maybe not, but maybe we can get there.
Yeah, we'll work on it.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, thank you again so much. Good luck on the shoot next week regarding Elle and Lexus. And thank you so much for taking out the time.
Absolutely.
Really appreciate it. And good luck with Hello from Taiwan.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
And all of you, thank you so much for joining us once again for the Inside series. It is always my pleasure to bring you these interviews for film.io. And I am Lauren Delisa Coleman.